So here we go, guys. We've got a Phantom Bevel Kelly Axe and Tool Company out of Charleston, West Virginia. Not sure on the age, but I got this thing, and I don't know if I got it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. Either way, whoever found it in the wild had soaked it in vinegar. And so what I'm doing here first is just hitting it with the wire wheel to kind of clean it up. I don't know if they left if they washed it properly beforehand or not, but here it is. This is what it looks like in the raw. Been stripped of all rust. Got the 6 stamp on the bottom. Got quite a bit of spalling. Weighs at 3.4 pounds. So what I'm doing here first is getting rid of the spalling. These heads, these old ones, I think, you know, the guys that are using them out in the wild back in the day, they probably used whatever they could to drive these things back down on a haft whenever they would get loose. And they've got spalling top, bottom, sides, pole, the whole thing. So generally the top of the eye is kind of curled in with spalling, and then the pole is pretty bad too. So one thing I wanted to point out in this video was how I work on the spalling with kind of maintaining the integrity of the original stamp. So what I'm doing here is I'm being really careful as I get rid of the spalling on the pole of this axe. Really watching where I'm going to, and I try to get as close to the stamp as possible without touching it. Obviously I go around the top and bottom as well, but that's kind of what we're working on here, getting a look at everything. And this thing obviously had been used a lot as a hammer, probably driving in metal wedges, and it might not have been ideally what they were supposed to do back then, but you got to think, if you're out there in the bush and you got to think about dropping your axe that weighs 3.5 pounds versus just using it to drive the wedge in, you're probably going to use your axe instead of dropping it and picking up some sort of maul or sledge or something like that. So I do clean up the pole of this axe as well. Sometimes I like to leave the all the pits and everything, but on this one I cleaned it up. I left a little bit, but for the most part it's pretty shiny. Here I'm using my Dremel tool. I've got a little burr bit, and I'm just using it on the spalling that kind of goes into the eye. Anyone that's ever hung an axe that's got that curl over inside the eye, you'll know that you're trying to get that wedge really driven in there, and it's going to work against you. So I think I'm trying to use my left hand here so the camera can catch what I'm doing, and I'm definitely right-handed, not wrong-handed. So anyway, it was going a little slower than normal. I think I switched it up at the end just because I was getting a little tired of how long it was taking. But anyway, it cleaned up pretty nice. This axe ended up at 3.386 pounds, almost 3.9. I get a close-up here of the pole where I did the grind work on that spalling, and I didn't touch the stamp whatsoever. So the 2 videos I made in this video regarding the process I do were wrong. Something was wrong with them. I couldn't upload them, so I had to make a little video after the fact. This axe here is kind of your typical axe you get. It has had no work done. It's got a lot of spalling, and the second axe here is how you typically see people clean them up. They grind off that spalling and they end up getting into the stamp right there. So you see how the Craftsman is halfway, well not halfway, but partially missing. And it's easy to polish it up, and yeah, you get a good profile on the axe, but the stamp's gone. Now this is the one I just finished, and you can see how I was able to maintain the stamp. You can still see a little bit of a profile issue, but I really love how you can still see the stamp. I think the stamp is what makes the axe, especially these vintage things, and being able to see that is just important to me. So what I do is I take my palm sander and I work it from the back and pull it. See the way my fingers are going there, and I'm usually not ever using anything more than less than a 320 grit. Sometimes it's even higher. So you don't lose much of that stamp, and you can smooth over what you've got going on there and maintain the stamp, and you can still see the history of the tool, how it was made back in the day, and that's just the way I do it. I'm going to make another one of these, and you can actually see how I do it. I've done it before, but I didn't really explain it like this. But you can see how you can read that stamp really clearly, and it still looks good. So going back, I've already kind of cleaned that up. What I did was I blued this thing. That was the other part that didn't get recorded here. But after I clean everything up and have the profile how I want, what I did was I used some Birchwood Casey Super Blue and coated the whole thing. Now I'm going over the axe with an 800 grit sandpaper. I'm not removing any material, but I am polishing the high spots so you get that nice pit and polish look. So what I'm doing here is just buffing that out and really brightening up the smooth areas while you still get the darkness of the pits from where the rust has gotten over this axe over time. So I think I'm using a blue compound here. There you go. That's kind of what she looks like. It's not completely done yet, but we're getting close. Now, the sharpening took quite a while. This bit had been damaged at the toe as well as the top. Mine is fleeting me on exactly what that's called, but you get the point. The top and bottom of the bit on this thing had been chipped off a little bit, so it wasn't super noticeable when you just looked at it in the beginning, but as you started removing material, you could see that there was quite a bit gone. So I started with a 180 grit and just worked the profile in that I wanted. I worked this down to about 25 degrees, and then I went to a 400 grit. Once the 400 grit was done, I didn't show this on camera either, but I took a piece of 800 grit sandpaper and just kind of by hand worked it over it to get some of those striations gone before I buffed it. But I know you don't want to watch sparks fly for 5 minutes, even at 5 times speed. Once I've got that done, I put some rubbing compound on there, hit it on the buffing wheel, and we're just kind of polishing it up. Now, I always start up a little high on the bit and get that mirror finish that I like. I get a lot of pressure here. And then at that point, I work on that burr, just kind of go back and forth each side real quick. And I think I'm doing one more pass on the pole of this thing just to get that mirror finish on the back as well. This thing turned out looking really cool. Once everything was all said and done, we ended up right at 3.356 pounds. So if you round up 3.35, 3.36. Here it is in the light. You can see the mirror finish on that thing. I was really happy with how it turned out. Again, this is just the way I do it. I see too often that people lose too much of the stamp, and it's one of my pet peeves. So maybe you learned something, maybe you don't, but hope you like this. Stick around for the next one. Thanks.